they said, hey, we're evacuating, be ready in the morning. And it was like that night, the tension just broke. Everybody went to their locker and got all the food they had, like everything. And we just dumped it in a big pile. I'm like, all right, what do we, let's make whatever we have. Like, what are we making? And everything was fine after that. It was just kind of odd to be in such an extremely high stress environment as like a bunch of dirty hippies. They come by the case at Costco. I might snag me one.
Yeah, that's what we got hooked on. We used to buy them all the time, and then it was like a pain in the to get up there, and then we kind of like faded off. But we found these ones at what's the grocery store?
There's Ingles in Food City.
Publix. Yeah, we found these in Publix. The ones in Costco, though, they're even bigger. Like, this is whatever.
I'll grab you a case while we're up there.
12. You don't have to grab me. I mean, that'd be great.
I'm literally going to buy some because you introduced me to them. I think I could manage.
Give me 6. Give me 6 cases. Bring me back a carton.
I don't know if we got that kind of space. Maybe if we get Mom's van in time.
Yeah. Good morning, Rob.
Morning.
I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, man.
It's great to be here, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. We've talked about it before, but Ben's he's not on vacation. It'd be awesome if he was on vacation, but he's training, he's doing his new job, so he's busy, traveling a lot. And so we've got guest co-hosts coming in. And today we've got Rob Dake. Rob's a good buddy of ours here in Tennessee, in Athens. And we met, when I say we, obviously you probably met Ben when at Jiu-Jitsu as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I met Rob about 3 years ago. I think we've been here for 3 years, or we're coming up on our 3rd year.
Yeah.
And
it sneaks by on us, doesn't it?
Dude, it goes by so freaking fast. I can't believe that we've been here for 3 years. Like, there's times I was driving around the other day, and I finally, like, it was one of those moments when I was driving, and I knew where I was, I knew where I was going, I knew everything. Like, I just suddenly felt like I was, I don't want to say like home, because I wasn't home at the time. Home definitely feels like home. When Steph and I got back from our anniversary last week, it was like, oh gosh, we're so excited to get home. But I just felt like I was part of this place finally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like in the community. And
yeah. Rather than just like an outsider that was driving around. For a long time, it felt like I was on vacation when we first moved here, where I was just like driving around everywhere, checking out everything. I'm like, this place is so cool. And now it totally just feels like I'm home. Like, I just know where I'm at. This is where I live now.
Yeah, it's odd, but it's also not. Like, to be, because I've traveled and done all sorts of stuff, but like home is home.
Yeah.
And it's just different to be. And I mean, I've lived other places and thought like, well, this is home. And, like I kind of knew the city, knew the town, knew the roads, knew where I was going. Mm-hmm. But there's something about being like sleeping in the house you grew up in, or maybe not. I guess I don't do that anymore either. But like living in a house you've lived in for a long time with, like, I'm going to sleep in my bed.
You're born and raised in Tennessee, though, right?
I'm born and raised in Athens.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude. How come you don't have an accent? Like, you don't have the typical Southern accent that we find here?
I was working overseas and speaking other languages. I kind of like, it's very difficult to explain things in bad French with a Southern accent. So I just kind of shaved it down. And I've had a couple of people, like I went on a date with a woman, not too terribly long before I met my wife. And she looked at me and she's like, where are you from? And I'm like, Liz, I'm from here. Like, we went to first grade together. Like, we did kindergarten, first grade together. And then like on through like 3rd or 4th grade when you moved away. And she's like, wait, you're Robbie Dake? I'm like, yes, Liz, that's me. And she's like, wow.
Did you ever have like the classic Southern accent?
Give a couple beers in me.
It comes back?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Big time.
Was it a conscious choice to kind of shift it and change it, or did it just happen naturally?
It just happened because people would be like, what? Okay. So let's. I've also started talking faster, which I didn't realize until. So people were like, man, you talk really fast. And I'm like, I didn't think I did, but I'll try to slow down.
Did you say you spoke French? Did you speak other languages?
So I speak like colonial French because I did Peace Corps in West Africa, and then I did development work in West Africa. And
what is colonial French?
So France had the colonial empire, kind of like everybody did, pre-80s.
Okay.
And it's not really French, and like Parisian French, though they're pretty snooty and they'll look down on you because you don't speak Parisian French. So
Okay.
I speak like West African, like Pigden French. And I spoke my Malinke, my tribal language, not really well, but enough to, haggle, get directions, get a taxi. And I picked up a little Haitian Creole when I was in Haiti, but again, it was just enough to like haggle and get directions and catch a cab.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about being here is like, because I think like the human itself naturally picks up on the dialect and the accent and anything like that when they're, like that's just a thing that we do normally in order to kind of ingratiate ourselves into the culture and society that we're in. And so Steph and I go back and forth because like she hates when she slips into this little Southern drawl thing that she's got going on. Sometimes it cracks me up when she does it. I feel like hers is way more predominant than mine is, but I really like y'all. Like I use y'all as much as I possibly can. It's such it's like the all encompassing, you don't have to worry about, like I was thinking about in jiu-jitsu all the time, I'm talking about like guys do this because it's such a male dominated sport. And it leaves out like when we've got women there obviously training, and I'm like, if we can just use y'all for everything.
Yeah, it's gender inclusive.
Exactly.
It's like the porta potty. It knows no gender.
Everybody's accepted.
Yep. And we don't want to leave Jenny and Jennifer and all those other killers out because like,
right. It's so hard though. I'm constantly like teaching, talking about like when the guy does this and when the guy does that. And I'm like, when the person does this or when the person does that, because it's obviously not always a man that you're rolling with or that is learning the fine art of jiu-jitsu. When did you start?
I have it written down somewhere. I think my very first interaction with Terry through chat was in spring of 17.
Okay.
No, spring of 18, because I started jiu-jitsu right before I started my current job, and I started that in July of 18. So April, May, and it's
like what, 8 years now?
Yeah.
What originally brought you to it?
Rogan.
Was it?
Yeah. I got into archery and Rogan, and I've stuck with archery and jiu-jitsu, and I stuck with jiu-jitsu. I've still got a really nice bow, and I've shot it maybe 50 times ever.
Yeah.
Because I just, like, I lacked the upper body strength. I'd probably do fine now, but I just, like, I went and bought a really nice bow. Then I was like, oh, and then, well, COVID. I was out shooting good, and then COVID hit, and I was just like, well, I guess that's it.
I've got a longbow from Legolas. That's the name of it.
Nice.
At least the name I gave it. And it was directly because of Lord of the Rings.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right?
Yeah.
What other things? I think Rogan's probably given, the vast majority of men in this culture or in the U.S., probably all over the world to some extent, right? But something, right? What else has he offered up that you've snagged a hold of? Because I know I've got a huge list for me that came through him to some capacity.
I've always been, I was in a fraternity in college, and one year I got the Brotherly Love Award with one of our founding principles, and I wasn't able to attend due to a family illness to that formal, and they gave it to me at the meeting, and I was just like, that's I wasn't expecting that, and they're like, dude, you always have done things your own way. Like, you are a man among men. And I was like, I don't know about that. But I've always questioned authority, and I've always questioned, like, why do we do this? Like, really, why do we do that? And then Rogan I've always had libertarian tendencies, and he pushed me a good push in that direction of, like, not to be... you
got a little something in your stash there.
It may be the wax.
There you go.
And then I've got some friends, some of whom listen to the show or watch the show, are libertarian, and we, kind of talk more about that, and not to become more of a skeptic, but not like in a bad way, but like in a, like, why do we do this? Why do we have this hang up? Why do we say this? Why do we do it that way? I mean, not because that's the way it's always been. It's not a really good answer for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I think I feel like I'm the same way, where I question everything because it's the same thing where it's like a lot of times the answer of like, well, that's just the way that it is, or we do it that way because you have to do it that way, or, you know, all of that stems from childhood for me. And I hate that answer. Like I always pushed back against all authority figures, whether it was mom, dad, principals, bosses, teachers, anything like that, because I was like, if you can't give me a reasonable answer that makes sense, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm fine if it makes sense.
Yeah.
But if it's a bunch of fucking bullshit and I can tell that it's bullshit, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to pay attention to you. I had a boss once. This was like the coolest thing when I was, one of my very first jobs was McDonald's. And the really cool thing about McDonald's is they have fine-tuned everything. Like everything at McDonald's makes sense, right? It's all prioritized around speed and efficiency. So like even from like the way that you apply the patties onto the grill and remove the patties off of the grill, there's a structure and a form to it because they've just streamlined everything to be as fast as possible. And the owner of this McDonald's, he would come in and he would do all the jobs all the time. So like he was in the store constantly and he'd be cleaning floors out, you know, in the bathrooms with the janitors, spraying down the driveway out, or not the driveway, but the drive-through out back, and cooking with us on the grill up front on the cat. He'd just do everything because he knew how to do everything. That was part of the, you know, becoming a store owner. But he was also that kind of guy that didn't mind getting into the trenches and doing stuff. And I would constantly ask him questions about everything, and he had a legitimate answer. Like even the way that they would put the liners, the trash bags out in the lobby, the way that they tie those and put those in, it all had a reason and all had a purpose. And it like satisfied all of my ADHD so much because I was like, oh, this makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's a good way to do things.
It's exactly a good way. It's like, now we know, now we understand why we do it. When you think back, Rob, about childhood, what are some things that stand out to you? I know that's like a super broad question.
Oh, geez.
What are some highlights from your childhood?
I had a great, supportive, loving family, and my father passed when I was 6. Yeah. He had glomerulonephritis, which is a autoimmune disorder that you get from having untreated strep. So his kidneys failed. And then he got a kidney transplant in 82. So that was early transplant procedure. And the immunosuppressants they had him on after the transplant let him get cancer. He got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and today it's very treatable, but he didn't make it long. He lost a bunch of weight, and by the time they got him to the hospital and they figured out what it was, they were like, you know, this is it.
Yeah.
So it was mom and me, and then
you were 6 when he passed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We had some very close friends of the family that basically adopted me, and I spent as much time with them as I did with my mom. They lived in the house next to my dad's fraternity house, and they were always, you know, cleaning out the gutters, helping out, and she'd bring cookies over. And he was the county agent here, and she taught at the elementary school right down the street that I went to. And I think the first time I stayed with them, I was 6 or 7 weeks old because Dad got a call on the transplant list, and he took off to he and Mom took off to Vanderbilt because that's where they were doing transplants then. And Mom just dropped me off. And, you know, it wasn't anything abnormal for me to just wake up at their house when I was a kid because, I mean, I was a heavy sleeper, still am. And just the love and the care that I got from everybody, that's one of the reasons I moved back here is I have such great memories of the town. And I bought a house 2 houses down from the house that they lived in. So
that's cool.
Same neighborhood, same people.
Yeah. What year were you born?
78.
78?
Mm-hmm.
That's the year that I've got 2 older brothers. One was 76, and then my older brother, Brian, was in 78. So we're pretty damn close.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that too, of like, I'm always fascinated by, Steph and I talk about it through the lens of like, there were so many things that took place back during the 80s that we all had like shared living experiences, but yet we didn't have all of the massive connection that we have today with social media and everything. So it's like, how did shit get
Oh yeah,
sent through the ether, right? Because I'm sure you and me have a lot of things that we probably experienced. Like for example, did you have a Nintendo growing up?
Oh yeah. I had
way-
a Atari 2800 first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just the way that we would get those games to play, like whether you were blowing on it or you had to like wedge the case in there in order to get
get it twisted. Just
in order to get it. And it's like, how the hell did we learn all of that shit and do all of the same stuff?
Because it was in Nintendo Power that we read religiously when they came out. And you know, you've seen the meme of like, you grew up in the 80s and it's all the Dayglow colors and stuff. And it's like, no, it was dark wood paneling and orange or burnt sienna shag carpet. And just like, our living room was so dark and we had a brick fireplace. Yeah, it was.
What were you into as a kid?
Playing outside,
Just
playing in the dirt. And then I had a lot of trouble learning to read because I couldn't see anything, and they test for that now. But like, I was in first grade and I was in the gifted program for math and science, and I was in the slow kid class for reading because I couldn't see anything. And they took me to the optometrist and they're like, yeah, you can't see anything, that's why you can't read. So they got me glasses, and then I got caught up real fast because my mom was a teacher and she wasn't good, and then my grandmother was a teacher. They weren't going to put up with me being behind at all. And I got a Atari 2800. It's still kicking around in a box somewhere. And then I played a lot of Asteroids. And what else? I played the Star Wars game. I don't remember which one. It may have just been called the Star Wars game where you flew around. And it was set on Hoth, so we were flying around shooting AT-ATs.
Yeah.
And
do you have any siblings?
So it's kind of odd that you mentioned that. I grew up an only kid, and then my mom married Ernie, and he had two kids that were much older than me. And he passed. And then my mom married my stepdad, Fred, who had two sons and then a stepdaughter. And then Mom and Fred adopted when I was 20.
Okay.
So I have a little brother that is 20 years younger than me, and then a bunch of step siblings, some of whom I haven't talked to most of them in a long time, but I managed to track down one of Fred's sons. We went out to dinner last weekend just to kind of catch up, and I wanted to get him caught up about his father's health and kind of ease everybody back in together, I think, just to get everybody back on the same page.
Yeah. So most of childhood was you were an only child, or when did the step siblings come on this?
So Mom married Ernie when I was 11-ish. I think I started dating when I was 10. His youngest son, Bob, was in college at that point, so he wasn't around much.
Okay.
And then his daughter, Susan, I only ever met 3 or 4 times. Wedding and his funeral. And I think we were out. He sold industrial equipment. He developed and invented a valve to drain industrial compressors. And he would travel around and sell those. And we went out one summer and met up with him in Texas, and then just rode along with him all along Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. And then when we were in California, we went out to dinner with Susan. And so like twice then. So yeah, 4 times ever, I think, that I've ever spoken to her.
Yeah. So what other kind of stuff, like, were you a comic book kid? Were you, I mean, obviously we talked a little bit about video games and stuff, or.
So G.I. Joe.
Okay.
And then comics.
Like the full-size G.I. Joes?
No, the little ones.
Yeah.
I had the aircraft carrier. I still have parts of it.
Nice.
I still have most of it. A lot of G.I. Joe stuff.
Yeah, we were super big into G.I. Joe. Like G.I. Joe, He-Man.
I've got, He-Man, Transformers.
Yes, Transformers. I was a Hot Wheel guy too. I had a ton of Hot Wheels.
It was Romper Stompers for me.
I don't know what those are.
So the little monster trucks with the battery that were Hot Wheels scale, but they would drive over your Hot Wheel. I still have a box of those kicking around
Oh,
somewhere.
wow.
Yeah.
I used to, one of my favorite things to do, because I was always like taking things, not necessarily taking things apart, but like I would modify and change things. And so I had this, do you remember Micro Machines?
Oh, yeah.
There was when Back to the Future came out, I had all the Micro Machines and like the DeLorean. And then Back to the Future 2, I took the tires off and I hot glued them on. So then it looked like it was the flying version of the
neat.
DeLorean. I was always trying, like I was either spray painting stuff black. That was my go-to. I would just spray paint everything black or dismantle it and make something new out of it. I was really big into guns. I used to play guns all the time. That was just the game, which was basically running around with toy guns, you know, making the noise, shooting each other.
Did that.
Did you do like scouts?
Did scouts. I started as a Cub Scout, and then I was pretty burned out by the time I got to scouts, and just kind of didn't want to do it anymore, and didn't.
Yeah.
And then picked it up again right before I turned 18 because I wanted to work at a summer camp, and then you had to be a certain rank to do that, to get a job there, and I made the rank, but I didn't get the job for whatever reason, and then I turned 18, so I aged out.
Yeah. We did scouts for, like, when I say we did scouts, my whole family was involved with it. Like, my mom was our den leader. My dad was involved in the, they were both involved on a council level at some point, but like he was involved in like the local level of managing everything. My brothers were in it. So it's like our whole entire childhood was scouting related events, and whether we were going or, you know, it was just tons and tons and tons of stuff. And because I was the youngest, I got to go experience all of it and go do all of it. So it was kind of the same thing by the time I made it to like the age for scouts. I'd already done all of it. It's like I had already gotten all the merit badges, even though I didn't get all the merit badges, just because I was there hanging out, doing all the shit. And so I didn't do any of it anymore. I got burned out on it after a while. What was your first job?
Cleaning out chicken houses. They're friend of the family is a guy that taught with my dad. They ran chicken houses. They still run chicken houses, and he needed a helper one summer. They were like, they had hauled out the chickens like that morning that I showed up, and it was mostly all I did was like open doors, you know, close doors, open gates, close gates, and then I ran a string trimmer cleaning up around the building while he was shoveling out. You know, those chicken houses are huge, and there was, you know, this much poop in the bottom, and they just would load it in a truck and go spread it in a field, and then go load up another truck and spread it in a field.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you, like, how long did you have that job? How old were you? Was that like
technically too young to work, but I mean, I was 12, 13, 14. And I mean, just until they were all done, and then they were set up to run again. And then after that, I don't know, mowed yards and just kind of this and that.
Yeah, just manual labor stuff. Well, what do you find to be like, actually, you know what I wanted to talk to you about? What about like movies and TV and stuff? Did you grow up watching a lot of film and TV growing up?
Yeah.
What are some of your favorites?
Well, Star Wars, like the first three, obviously. Red Dawn. Like I was really into like, they're coming. We better be ready.
Yeah.
And I can still, like, when I was working one of my development jobs, my boss was the defense attaché, and we were standing around talking, and he had a picture of something. I was like, oh, that's a Sager Soviet anti-tank missile. He's like, you're a hippie. How do you know that? I'm like, look, I was in the Peace Corps. I'm not a hippie. There's kind of a difference, but like, I really got into Red Dawn. Like, I know what that stuff is. Like, well, you're like the first person that's told me what that was without having to be told. Like, I know what it is. It's a Sager Soviet anti-tank missile system. Like, that's what it is. I don't remember the effective range or anything, but looking at the picture, I can tell you what it is.
What are some other ones? I loved Red Dawn too. Like that was a go-to.
Goonies, Princess Bride.
Ooh, I was Wesley for Halloween in second grade.
Nice.
My mom used to make all of our Halloween costumes. And so I had like the coolest costume ever with like a black puffy shirt and pants and mask, whole 9 yards. And then I would practice. I had like the fake plastic sword, but I would practice putting it on the ground and then kicking it up so I could catch it.
Nice.
And I got to the point where I nailed it.
What else? Gettysburg, that was later. Gettysburg, Tombstone, Smoking the Bandit.
That one's like 70s though, right?
Yeah, but like I could recite Smoking the Bandit 2 beginning to end when I was, I don't know, 8. Like, and I could, you put it on right now, I definitely could follow along, but I could recite that movie beginning to end. And then there was this, so the Nicolas Cage Gone in 60 Seconds is actually a remake.
Is it?
Yeah. And the original Gone in 60 Seconds was by this guy named H.B. Halicki. And his wife sold the rights to the movie to get it remastered. He got killed in a filming accident for, it may have been Gone in 60 Seconds too. Like his big thing was, he was a car guy. And they would make car guy movies. So Junkman, he may have been killed filming Junkman 2. A smokestack collapsed on the car he was driving. It was a pretty tragic accident. But they would like just drive cars. And like the original Gone in 60 Seconds, it's like an hour and 47 minutes, and almost 40 minutes of that is one continuous car chase. It's not like it's broken up and there's 40 minutes of car chases in the movie. There is a like 37-minute car chase in a movie that's under 2 hours long. Like it is a car guy movie. And there was a video rental place not far from where I lived, or where we lived. And when they went to sell that movie, they sold it to my mom. Like when they were rotating it out of stock, my mom bought it. And I continued to watch it. And I am sure that tape is in a box somewhere. When his wife had it remastered, they released it on DVD and I bought it. But it didn't have the original soundtrack because she couldn't afford it. And it had some just 70s funk music, and it wasn't anything super special, and a couple gospel songs. And then I was able to track down on eBay a VHS to DVD rip of it. So I have a video copy, which I will gladly loan you if you want to watch that
I don't have
movie.
anything to play it on.
Well, you've got a TV?
It's a video, or you've got it on
No,
DVD?
it's a video file.
Oh, okay.
But I'll loan you a copy of a video file.
When's it from?
74, I think.
Okay.
The original Eleanor was a 72 Mach 2 Mustang, yellow with black trim. And everybody's like, oh, it's 66. I was like, no. That's not right. It's a 72. It was the last of the Mustangs at that point in time. With I think it was a big block car. And when you look at it now, you're just like, man, that's kind of hideous, because it was like right there at the beginning of that malaise era for American cars, where they just got really ridiculous,
really
big. Yeah, big and dumb and slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and got like 6 miles to the gallon.
I was definitely a movie kid growing up. We watched, that was like the family pastime, was watching movies together. And I used to, when I was in high school, I would walk around with the movie section in my pocket from the newspaper for my favorite theater. And I would like rip that out of the newspaper and carry it with me. So then if I was like in class one day and I got bored and I was like, oh, I'm going to slough next period, I would look and see if there was like a time that would work. And then the closest movie theater for us, or at least the movie theater that I liked, was like 45 minutes away. It was in town, right, in the big city. And I would just slough and then go see a movie. And like I watched, countless Red Dawn, all those Goonies. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. I mean, we could sit here all day long coming up with the list of shit that we used to watch growing up, obviously.
So
but
Rambo 2.
yeah.
Missing in Action. All like, a slew of war movies. So I was the son of 2 teachers and the grandson of 2 teachers.
Okay.
I didn't get away with nothing. Like the principal of the elementary school I went to, student taught with my grandmother. Like there wasn't nothing that I did in school that my mother or my grandmother didn't immediately know about. So
Yeah.
I never skipped. I skipped class once in high school because I was a theater kid and we were doing matinee productions for the elementary schools, and I was able to skip class because I was like the set director and I was helping set up the set, and I was obviously screwing around, but that's the only time I ever skipped class. Was that one time ever my senior year in high school. And I'm sure my mother heard about it.
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Woolly. I'm sure you've heard how we're all consuming copious amounts of microplastics. Well, it turns out all of that workout activewear that you're wearing also has those toxic chemicals embedded right into them. All of Woolly's clothes are 100% merino wool, which means it's a natural fabric, which is far better for your overall health. On top of their clothes not only looking good, they're naturally odor resistant and they wick moisture away from your body. So I wear them all the time, whether I'm working out, hiking, around the house, out for the night, it doesn't really matter. Woolly has you covered. I swapped out all of my boxers with Woolly. Not only do they look good, not only do they feel good, but I also wasn't wrapping my boys up in all of those synthetic materials and microplastics. So if you're ready to take your health seriously, it's time to go with Woolly. Listeners of this podcast can save 15% on anything at their website. Click the link in the description and be sure to enter in promo code BRAVE at checkout. It's time to get serious about your health, fellas.
So my dad taught in the city and my mom taught in the county. So I went to elementary school and middle school in the city and then high school in the county. So yeah, like everybody knew everybody. And, oh, you're Joe Dake's kid. Oh, you're Libby Dake's kid. Like I didn't get away with nothing.
Yeah, that was the same thing for me, except I slept all the time. So it wasn't a big deal, but everybody knew everybody. And I grew up in the same small town that my mom grew up in. And so everybody knew me as everybody knew us because of her and the community and everything like that. But like when I would get pulled over, we'd get in trouble by the cops oftentimes, and it would be somebody that she went to high school with. So like I remember one time, I'm trying to remember what this one was for. Because I used to get brought home by the cops. I mean, it was back in the day where they would just bring you home or like follow you home if we were driving, right? If we were old enough to have our license or whatever. And a buddy of mine, my best friend growing up, he's still my good friend. We found a basketball in somebody's not in their driveway. It was in their front yard. And so we snagged the basketball and then we drove around town and proceeded to throw the basketball at mailboxes. But it was like terrible. Like we didn't put much thought into it, obviously, because we would throw the basketball, and if we hit the mailbox, we'd still go back and get the basketball. Or if we missed, it was just the dumbest idea ever.
Yeah.
And at some point, we chuck it at this mailbox, and when we were like stopping to go back, we realized that they were coming after us, and so they had been like sitting on their front porch, saw all of this happen, hopped in their car to come chase after us. And then like kept us there until the cops showed up. And instead of the cop just brought me home, and I had to like go wake up my mom and everything. And she comes out and talks to him, and they totally know each other because they went to high school together and everything. And my buddy and I can't remember if we had to, I don't think there was restitution. I think we had to just do some community service or something like that. It was something really stupid and silly, but
there's a group of kids I went to high school with that blew up a porta-john with a stick of dynamite. Like if you do that today, you go to jail,
Right.
jail. And it was, what year was that? It was like 89, 90. They were a couple of years ahead of me, but yeah, like, and it happened and they were just like, boys will be boys. And it's just like that. Yeah, not anymore. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, there's so much stuff that we used to get away with that, like you said, now you would go to jail for.
Yeah, and like that charge will follow you the rest of your life. Yeah.
You said you were in drama in high school?
Yep.
How involved were you?
Acted a little and then got into like lights because my dad did lights, and I always thought that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went from lights to set work, and then I was the stage manager for 3 both plays junior year, first place senior year, and then I was just like, that was too high stress because I was 18 and I knew everything that there was to know, and I just didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I was the assistant stage manager for the second place senior year, and that was a lot more fun, a lot less stress, just moving stuff around and lights.
What did you want to do when you grew up? Like, do you remember looking back when you were a kid?
I wanted to be a doctor.
You wanted to be a doctor?
Yeah, I don't have the chemistry. I don't have the brain power for that. I just was like, I enjoyed the college life a little too much. That's like a lot of people go to college for 6 years. They are doctors. I did not.
Where did you go to school?
Tennessee Tech over in Cookville.
Okay.
It's an interesting place.
And you said you were in a fraternity?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
So I joined as a junior. I was the old man in the fraternity even when I joined the fraternity. I always thought fraternities were like for sellouts, people that were buying their friends. And Sigma Phi Epsilon's the fraternity I joined. They turned out to be something completely different. It was, you didn't rush, you didn't pledge. You just you joined, and then you had to go through some stuff. It was all self-betterment, self-improvement stuff, self-reflection. And then as you kind of ticked off the box and they're like, yeah, we think you're ready. We're going to move you up to the next steps. Kind of like jiu-jitsu, like, oh yeah, you're doing better. There's another stripe. Here's another belt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was there that I fell in love with community service, like working just like one of my fraternity brothers started a project called Thanksgiving on the Mayflower, where we got Mayflower Moving Truck Company to donate a truck. And then we would cook a bunch of food and get a bunch of donations. And then we would go to a shelter and do a food donation. And I was at, I think the first one, it may have been the second one that we did. It's probably the second one because it was much bigger. And this dude just came up to me and said, thanks. I really appreciate all the work you guys have put into this. And that was one of those like, moments. Like, I don't think I slept for a couple of days. Like that was, well, it was just like, cause I was like, I'm like maybe 3 paychecks away from being that dude. Like I can't, I've lived a pretty cushy life up to this point, and it was that stark realization of like we're all in the same struggle.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow. And then from there, I really got into the work we did at like community service work. And then that's what led me to Peace Corps application. And I applied and got accepted, and my grandmother was sick, and I didn't go. And then later on, I was working a job at an automotive factory, working at a pivot table that was as old as the plant. So this was 2004, and that pivot table they had created in 88 when they started the plant. And I was like, someday I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be 50 and I'm going to be working in this same damn pivot table. Like,
What's a pivot table?
It's a big Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
Like it's a way to take a whole bunch of data and make a table out of it. And I was like, someday I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be working this same damn pivot table. I got to do something else with my life. So I reapplied to the Peace Corps and got accepted and shipped out. And my grandmother died while I was like, as the day I was moving into my site, we got a call on the radio. And they're like, hey, stop the truck. Everybody out.
Oh no.
And I was like, I know what they're like. You got to get out of the truck. I'm like, I know it's a call for me. Like, you don't have to like, and they're like, no, you got to get out of the truck. And I got out of the truck and they did the call and they're like, hey, yeah, you need to call the country director on the radio. I was like, it's my grandmother, right? And they're like, how'd you know? I was like, she's like 96. I'm like, she had liver cancer, and just the only person that knew was her power of attorney. She didn't want anybody to know. She didn't want anybody to do anything about it. And that's kind of the way it is. But so I came home, did the funeral, went back and finished my service.
What exactly is the Peace Corps?
So it is a community level organization working with, I don't want people who need assistance. So USAID, which has been in the news a lot lately, is a top-down organization. That is Congress directly funding. Okay, USAID, when I was around development work, is Congress directly funding government programs. So I did Peace Corps in the Republic of Guinea, and one of the big USAID projects was Faison Ensemble working together. So it was a government transparency organization specifically for elections. I wound up working for them as a contractor for a little bit. But Peace Corps is the other end of the spectrum. So I worked with farmers in a very tiny, very remote village, trying to teach how to increase food security, get better crop yields. And when I was in my training, they're like, this is how we're going to break out the math for you. We expect you to train 10,000 people. It doesn't, it's be the same person, but you know, if you train them 50 times, they count as 50 people. We're going you to do 10,000 trainings. It was 1,000 trainings. We want 100 people to think about what you did. We want 10 people to try what you did, and we want one of them to do it again next year. And that made my mind explode, because I was like, this is like a 0.1% success ratio. And they're like, yeah, but you know, you're, as my buddy Rob said, we're not going to move mountains, but we're going to move a few meaningful stones. And when I kind of sat down and took a step back and realized it's like, so if I can get one farmer to change how they do stuff, that's a big gamble, because if their crop fails, they don't eat.
Right.
It's not like they can just run down to the store and get something. They don't have anything. Like, they save money to buy seed to eat, not because they're trying to supplement their income. Like, if they don't grow food, they don't eat. It was sustenance level farming. And my family was very large. There was my host father and his wives, and then I think he had 7 brothers, 4 of whom lived on the compound. Like, my host dad's oldest son was 19 and his youngest son was 4 and his oldest grandson was 5. So he had it was a nephew-uncle relationship where the nephew was older than the uncle, which was, I always chuckled about that. Right. But they had a very large family.
When you say host family, like, I don't understand what that is.
So I had my own little hut with my own latrine, and then like next door was my host family.
Okay.
And that was my immediate family in the community. So if I did something wrong, they kind of had to deal with the fellow. I mean, I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't out screwing around and doing bad stuff. But like they're like, oh, you're with the Jollos. Okay, you're all right. And they were kind of my entree into the community. And then they would do stuff for me, like they would cook breakfast for me, especially when we did the fast. I did the fast with them. They're predominantly Muslim country.
Okay.
So I did the fast the first year. I didn't do the fast the second year. But I was respectful of the people doing the fast. I didn't eat out in public or drink out in public or listen to music or anything. But yeah, the fast is rough.
So I'm still like, because in my mind, the Peace Corps, like the way that I had envisioned it, it's kind of like, oh gosh, what am I comparing it to in my head? Where it's like you would get stationed somewhere and go as a group of Peace Corps members, and then you're there on site doing things for a determinate amount of time, and then you come back to the U.S. or whatever. Is that not like you're the individual out there doing it and stationed with someone? Or stationed with a family in a sense?
Yes, but it goes both ways. There are 2 big sectors for Peace Corps. There's education, and a majority of Peace Corps volunteers were teachers. And then there are a bunch of subsectors. So let me take a step back. One of my buddies was a chemistry teacher. And he was looking through, he's like, wow, I got to teach these kids what happens when you mix acetylene and something else. And I was like, what? because I have an industrial background. And I'm like, yeah, they want in this experiment, we're supposed to mix acetylene gas and this other thing. And I was like, you know how scary that is? He's like, yeah, that's horrifically scary. Acetylene gas spontaneously combusts above 15 psi. And I don't mean like a little poof. I mean like the bottle explodes and bad things happen. It's like acetylene is not something you fool around with.
Yeah.
But English teachers, science, math. What else did they teach? I don't remember the other sectors they taught in. I wasn't an education volunteer. And then in Guinea, we had small business development, agroforestry, and then health volunteers. And then in other countries, there are similar but not the same. Like Mali had water and sanitation. Our country director was in I think Zambia, and he was a fish guy. So they did fisheries. And then in other places, like there's forestry like just pure forestry volunteers that do forestry management. There's ecotourism. That's part of like the small enterprise development, the said folks. I don't think I'm missing anybody, but it's kind of anything you can think of. There's a Peace Corps job doing something similar. And we come in, we train together. And in Guinea, the way they did it is the sector folks train together and the education folks train together. And then in some countries, they just bring everybody in as a big group and everybody trains together. And then you go do your job together, because you'll do culture training, language training, and then individual sector training. And then they kind of split us up. And so like all the AGFO people did AGFO stuff. And then we would all get together for language and culture training, customs. And then we would split up as men and women and do, this is what men do, this is what women do, which was kind of odd, but it's a completely different culture, how the way they do things.
Is it a paid gig? Like, is it something that you're paid for?
So when Kennedy founded the Peace Corps, you got $225 a month as a stipend. And when I finished my service, and today it's still $225 a month. Like, nobody does Peace Corps for the money. It is a big tool used in development and in U.S. government. Like, up until recently, a third of all State Department employees were former Peace Corps, and 2/3 of USAID were former Peace Corps, because it's kind of streamlines you into the bureaucracy. Because
kind of a stepping stone thing.
Yeah, and then especially in development, like if you do Peace Corps, you're set. Like they know, oh, you did 2 years in the Peace Corps, you can manage, you can hack it. Like I did after Peace Corps, I worked in development another 2 years. I was mostly a power engineering guy. I babysat generators, set up offices, closed down offices, did procurement, did logistics. Mostly I was just babysitting generators. And then after that all ended, I wound up in Haiti after the earthquake. And you would be surprised the number of people that worked in development and had master's or doctorate degrees in development and had spent maybe 3 or 4 days in the field ever.
Really?
And they would just like, yeah, I'm not getting out. They're like, we're at the camp. We need to go meet with the people and do the stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm not getting out of the truck. I'm like, what do you mean you're not getting out of the truck? I'm like, I'm not getting out of the truck. I don't feel safe. And it's like, this is as safe a place as you are ever going to be today. We are perfectly safe here. These are our people. We've got guards. This is as safe as you're going to get today. I don't know. I was like, okay, I'll handle it. So, go do the thing for them. But like they would come down from headquarters with all these great ideas. And then when the reality of, 1.3 million people in the camps in town hit them, they just couldn't process it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did 4 years in West Africa. I mean, I had some big dick swagger for development work. And then I went to Haiti after the earthquake, and it broke me.
Really?
It was the most depressing thing I have ever seen, ever. It was bad. And things got better, and they are again, probably worse now. I don't know. all the people I knew aren't there anymore. And I think all the Haitians I knew don't live in the country anymore because it's just not a great place to be right now, from what I understand.
Yeah.
At least Port-au-Prince.
What are some other things that you've, like when you look back over the course of your life, what are some key things that stand out? Moments, experiences, you know, that kind of shifted the course of where you were headed and where you were going?
That's a tough one. Well, so I finished up my Peace Corps service, and my sector director wasn't, I don't know, he just wasn't super thrilled about getting me a third-year position because I would have stuck around. So you do your 2 years, so 27 months. You do 3 months of training, 2 years in 2 years in your job. I had an interruption of service for political instability. They shut down the program, and we all evacuated out. And then I was one of the, I think, 13 that went back. And so would we all, let's take a step back. When we're doing our training, about more than midway through, you get your site selection. So
Okay.
they would, the current volunteers that were doing our training would get out and they would draw a map of the country with chalk, and they would draw all the big cities that were getting volunteers. And I looked at my buddy Diana. I was like, Diana, I'm not going to get the site at the end of the road. I'm going to get the site next to the site at the end of the road. And she's like, no, Bob Dake, that's not going to happen. So she got the site at the end of the road. She was the furthest volunteer from the Capitol, and I was the next volunteer. I think I was 17 clicks from her. And when we went back, so everything fell apart. Government collapsed. And when they fired the program, they evacuated everybody out. That wasn't scary. The evacuation process wasn't scary. The leading up to the evacuation process was a little scary. I got trapped in Concon, my regional capital, and that was the opposition stronghold.
Okay.
And we were there, I don't know, 8 days before they pulled the plug. And you could just about tell what time of the day it was based on the gunfire you could hear in the distance. Because everybody get up, go to prayer, have breakfast. About 8:39, gunshots start. About 11:30, 12, things start to ramp down. Call for prayer, midday meal. Things start ramping up again. About 3 or 4, start slowing down. Call for prayer, evening meal. And then it was evening prayer, and then it was over. And we, it was just bizarre living in this. We were in a walled compound with, it was me and Ryan and quite a few female volunteers. I don't want to name any names just for privacy's sake. And it was like Ryan and I were the two guys, and then them, and it was like these two camps that had a lot of friction because they were kind of the mean girls. Like they were all right, they're good people, but like we were all walled in the compound, and things were very tense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't through any personal interaction. It was just like real high stress environment. And then they said, hey, we're evacuating, be ready in the morning. And it was like that night, the tension just broke. Everybody went to their locker and got all the food they had, like everything. And we just dumped it in a big pile. I'm like, all right, what do we, like, let's make whatever we have. Like, what are we making? And everything was fine after that. It was just kind of odd to be in such an extremely high stress environment as like a bunch of dirty hippies.
Yeah.
So that was, I guess, one of those formative experiences. So we evacuate out. We go to Mali. Mali has a not out far outside of Bamako. They had a training village, I guess is what they called it, called Tubaniso, and it had like huts that everybody stayed in. It was like a resort, and then they had the big compound, and they had all their training stuff. So they had their ag volunteers did beekeeping. Their water sanitation people would dig wells. They had all the demo stuff there. So we kind of went through their training because they were going to farm out a bunch of the volunteers to other programs. And I didn't want to go somewhere else. I liked my village. So I wanted to come back. So we went home. I worked in Michigan on a animal traction farm, learning how to, drive horses and oxen. And then they fired the program back up and they were like, hey, you want to come back? I'm like, I'm in. So I came back in with, I think there were 13 of us. There may have been 11. And we just picked right back up where we were. And at that point, I was the furthest volunteer from the Capitol. But
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Heritage Steel. If you're serious about quality in the kitchen, it's time to check out Heritage Steel. All their cookware is handcrafted right here in Tennessee.
Heritage Steel isn't just another cookware brand. This is American craftsmanship at its finest, using high-quality, multi-clad stainless steel to give you unmatched durability, precision, and performance. Whether you're searing, sauteing, simmering, or good old-fashioned pan frying, these pans are built to last for generations.
Their cookware is safe for any cooking surface. It's easy to clean, and every piece comes with a lifetime warranty.
And right now, Brave Men Dare listeners, I'm talking to you. You guys can save an extra 10% off. Go over to www.heritagesteel.us/brave. Make sure you use the promo code BRAVE, all caps, to get that extra 10% off at checkout. Upgrade your kitchen with the cookware that's going to stand the test of time.
Heritage Steel, chef-grade cookware for less.
I think only by a couple of clicks because Kim was also very close. She was equidistant, I think, from the Capitol, but she was on the main road, which was really nice, the Goudron. And I was out on the country road. And so I was 73 clicks from Concon, and it took, even in the Peace Corps vehicle, it was a 4-hour drive to go, 48 miles. Like
Really?
it was, the roads were bad.
Yeah.
They were just bad. And I think
All in all, how much time did you do?
just under 23 months and change. And then I ended my service on a Tuesday and I started working for Face on Ensemble, that USAID project, on Thursday. And I went down to the forest region, which was actually closed to volunteers at the time. They borders with Liberia and Sierra Leone, so a lot of recent trouble in that area. And I was in their main office down there just troubleshooting a generator, which was really interesting. Like, I walked around for about 15 minutes and called the program manager. I was like, hey, found your problem. He's like, what's that? I was like, you got too many coffee pots plugged in. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's like a 50 kVA generator, and every office has at least one coffee pot. Most of them have two. Everybody has their own coffee maker. And he's like, so how do we fix this? It's like, you go get one of those really big coffee makers and put it in the kitchen and tell everybody they can't have their own coffee maker. And it's like, okay, write me a report. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're on a 3-day contract. Like, explain everything you just told me and then write me a report. I was like, okay. So that's what I did.
So then let's expand out a little bit and think more about outside of that time period. Because when was this? Was this, you said, like early 2000s?
06, 08 for Peace Corps, and then 08 to 10 for development.
Okay. And when did you get married? When did you and Becca get married?
3 years ago.
Oh, it's only been that recent?
Yeah, I was 42 and she was 40 when we met.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have many relationships prior to that? Long-term relationships?
So I met the girl I'd always wanted to meet before I joined the Peace Corps.
Okay.
And I knew in my heart of hearts that if I didn't join the Peace Corps, because I was I had a ticket, passport, ready to go. And she and I went to school together, and I had known her in school, but we weren't buddies.
Mm-hmm.
She was a very good friend of mine's, now wife's, sorority sister. And I knew that if I didn't do the Peace Corps and started dating her, and I'm sure I would have gotten married because everything, the stars aligned, it's like I would resent her forever because I didn't get to do the thing I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it just didn't work out. And then I met a gal while I was in the Peace Corps. She was in another country, and that was going really well. And then she got a placement in med school in the States. So she went to med school. She's a very successful pediatrician right now. And then when I was working in the Turks and Caicos, I met a gal who was, so I worked for the School for Field Studies, which is a collegiate level study abroad program. And I met a gal in the States that actually went to another School for Field Studies campus in East Africa. Yeah. And I don't know, like things went really far. And then I kind of was like, wow, she's kind of a manipulative bitch. Like I need out. And I knew that if I broke up with her, it would be very traumatic for her. So I had to engineer a situation in which she would break up with me, and I feel really bad about it. But like I needed out, and I don't think she could have handled me just being like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
So it took, I still feel kind of dirty. Like I had to manipulate her into breaking up with me. And then Becca, like I quit counting because after that girl and before Becca, I quit counting when I was on, I think, my 15th first date. And then like I may have had a couple of second dates after I quit counting. And there was, when Becca and I got serious, I had gone on 3 or 4 dates with another gal. And date, nothing serious. Like just, she had kids that were older and we kind of had to juggle schedules and things were progressing there too. And I was like, hey, look, I've met somebody, things are getting serious. Like, it's been great knowing you. And she was like, yeah, well, I appreciate you telling me and not just taking off. And then that's it.
Yeah. How did you and Becca meet?
Internet.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And we were going out to dinner. Like we had dinner plans at the Peppo's in Etowah. And I was like, I'll be the one with the mustache. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, just when you get there, I'm the one with the mustache. So she got in and there's 2 or 3 guys with like regular cop mustaches. And then there's this. And she's like, oh, are you Rob? I'm like, yeah, that's me. So that's how we met. I'm the one with the mustache.
I met somebody over the internet a long time ago. It was when I was 18 and I had graduated high school. I had taken some sort of computer class my senior year in high school. And in conjunction with that class, we had to, it was like way back at the very beginning with Hotmail and stuff. So we created a Hotmail account. So I had a email account. And each day you'd go and check your email and we'd send each other emails back and forth because obviously it was like a brand new thing. We didn't really know what the fuck was happening. And at some point along the way, I got some, what do they call them? Chain email, right? Is that like,
yeah. If it's forward this to 5 friends or
exactly.
You'll die.
Yeah, I got one of those. And just randomly, because I was literally, we were just dinking around in class because it was a goof of a class anyways. It was kind of a waste of a class. And I went through that email and you could see all the different email accounts that it had been forwarded to. And I just clicked on random email accounts and sent them an email, just like, hi, my name's Craig. It was just like a generic thing of like looking to almost have like pen pals in a sense, right?
The original copy pasta.
Yeah. And one of the people ended up responding to me, and she was a girl that lived in Minnesota. And so we would email back and forth a little bit. And it was very like, I mean, super basic, innocent, like so out of sight, out of mind. I never even thought about it until I was in the class because we didn't have a computer at home. I didn't have access to it anywhere else or anything. And so it was like, oh, look, here's another email. And I would respond back. And so we communicated back and forth a little bit. And then when I graduated, I sent her my phone number and I was like, give me a call if you ever want to talk or whatever. And then graduate, we go on this big, long senior trip down to Mexico on this cruise. And it was in the middle of the summer. At some point I came home and there was a message up on the cupboard that Jess had called. And I was like, who's Jess? Like, I didn't even remember this girl's name. I felt so bad. And then I was like, yeah, she called and left you a message. And I'm like, okay. And then it like clicked. I'm like, oh, that's the gal that I had been emailing back and forth with. And we ended up meeting in person and she came out to Utah and we went on this big long road trip together. And then I moved to Minnesota and stayed with her for a few months, and we had a brief romantic relationship that left
Yeah.
all sorts of wonderful experiences, but that was my one and only time of meeting anybody online.
Well, I mean, that was then. This
Yeah.
is, like now.
Much different now.
Yeah, it's
so commonplace and normal now, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I was just thinking, like, I probably know more people that have met on the internet now than any other way, but
Yeah, it's just the way it goes. Well, Rob, what else comes to mind? What would you like to chat about? Do you have any questions for me as well? I know that like our relationship, like we said, we met 3 years ago or anything like that, but is there anything that comes up that you think of?
How'd you get into law enforcement?
That was kind of just a random thing where it was, at the time I was working at a warehouse, not at a warehouse, I was working at a magnesium plant, and I was looking for something that wasn't a magnesium plant.
Yeah, like I can't imagine how horrifically scary it would be to work in a big building full of stuff that burns at 17 bajillion degrees.
Like it was like one of the main factories or manufacturing, like it was one of the main jobs for the town that I lived in, because it was on the outskirt of town. You know, it wasn't even on the outskirt of town, it was several miles away, but all the men in town worked there. Like I had a lot of people growing up whose dads worked there, and I had moved back to Grantsville, and it was just a job, and I didn't have to work in the refinery where they were doing everything. I worked in the warehouse and just drove around parts and delivered different things. And so it was a pretty cake and easy job, but it was really, really boring. Like most days if I was working the graveyard shift, I would stalk and then just like fall asleep watching movies in the van. And it paid great, but it was just super boring. And so I was looking for something else to do, and I wanted to have like a career. In my mind, it was like I had had so many jobs over the course of my life where I would typically just go from like job to job to job. I don't even think up until that point, maybe the longest I had ever been at a job consistently was, I don't even think it was a year. I just didn't stay at jobs. I quit every job that I ever had. And then I was looking for jobs, and I saw that the sheriff's office in Salt Lake was hiring for corrections at the Salt Lake County Jail. And, you know, they list off all the great benefits and the pay and all this wonderful things that they offer you. And so I just went and I applied because I was looking for something new and something different. And I wanted, you know, like a more career-based kind of like real job rather than whoops. But yeah, man, that was it. It was just a job at the beginning. It was just a career. I knew nothing about what I was really in for. Like I'd never been to jail. I didn't know any idea what jail was even really like. Anything that I had ever thought about jail was always based off of movies. And so this jail was direct supervision. So it was less like guys behind bars and somebody walking up and down. It was like inside the housing unit with 64 prisoners. And so it was really, really different than I had thought it was going to be. And I did 2.5 years there, and then eventually got hired on for the police department that I worked at, which was Tooele City, and spent just about 5 years doing that. And yeah, it was fun. It was a very, it like definitely was a pivotal, life-changing experience for me for, you know, a myriad of reasons. Not only because of like the impact and the effect that it had on me, but it's where I met Steph, and it's where life really started to shift and change up for me.
Was she in dispatch?
Yeah, she was a 911 operator. So
that's a job I don't think I could. Because I've read like some of the Reddit stuff of like, it's like that sounds awful.
Yeah,
like,
I couldn't do that job.
Yeah, like that's
the level of like the way that I describe it, because when you're a cop, you're out there like multitasking at a really high level, trying to do a bunch of different things. And obviously, like, you know, there's a high level of risk at all times and all sorts of different things that you're doing. But dispatch has to do like an equal amount, if not higher level of multitasking, because they're dealing with not just, you know, one person's issues, they're dealing with everybody's issues all at the same time. And then the emotional toll of having to like listen to everything and hear everything. It's like you're getting all of these phone calls all the time of the chaos that's ensuing, or officers over the radio, or you're just hearing so much trauma and not being able to do anything about it other than just
sit in your cube and process. And
just sit in the shit and not be able to do anything other than like send somebody and hope that they get there in time to do it. And
that just like it's
an unbelievable job.
Like, most every call is somebody's worst day ever.
Exactly. Steph was really, really good at it. She when she finally quit, she was a sergeant, and she was definitely on the path to succeeding in that field and continuing up the chain, but it was too hard, just emotionally and mentally and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so it was breaking her down.
I can believe it. And like so when I was in Haiti, so I worked for Catholic Relief. I was able to speak construction. They were building a hospital, and I could speak construction and health because of my development background. So I was the liaison between the health team that worked at the hospital and the construction team that was building the hospital. That's kind of how I got that job, because I could do both. And a lot of the people that were working with the health team were from University of Maryland shock trauma, which at the time, and as far as I know, still is the yardstick for emergency medicine. Like if you want to learn emergency medicine, that's where you go. Like the military sends folks there for advanced first aid training and combat medic stuff, because lots of stabbings, lots of shootings, lots of stuff to treat. So they would send techs in, or people that needed to learn, corpsman medics, how to do this stuff. And a lot of the people I worked with were out of the ER or the emergency orthopedics section, and we would go out to dinner, and I could generally find some other people to sit with. Like, they were great people, and I love them, and I still keep in touch with them, not as much as I should. But, just the stuff that they would talk about at dinner would turn a dead man's stomach. And it's just like, I don't like, I know that morbid humor and just dealing with it is part of it, but it's like, I ain't that rough and tumble.
Yeah.
Like that's,
whew. Yeah, it's definitely part of it for sure. Like cops and paramedics and ER nurses, they all tend to, it just like it's a coping mechanism to get through all of it, because you see so much of it all day long, and you have to have some way of like processing it. And because you're processing it together with the person that's next to you, oftentimes it usually is. Like I remember, I have a terrible story. It's funny when I experienced it, I laughed about it, but it's an example of kind of what you're talking about, where it was New Year's Eve, and like that week or something, I don't remember the exact time frame, but like we had recently had a training department wide, and it was a really stupid training. It was one of those like really asinine ones that we don't understand why we're at this training. And in the training, the woman that was giving the training was talking about like emergency management systems and all these kind of different things, and like the process for, like when some big catastrophic thing would happen, then there would be protocols for how we do this, and this. And one of the first things that she like hit on was like, somebody has to activate emergency response. Like it was this really asinine phrase. The whole thing was like, did somebody activate emergency response? You activate emergency response. So we obviously joked about it, and it became a running gag for a minute. And we were on this call, and it was New Year's Eve, and nothing had really happened all night long. It was really strange, actually. It was one of those like kind of oddly weird nights where you would have thought that we would have been really busy. Like there was a bunch of extra officers working, and even some of the detectives were kind of like on duty in a sense, because we expected that it was going to be a busier night than normal, and nothing happened until midnight. And at midnight, somebody ended up shooting themselves in their head and killing them. Like it wasn't murder. It was somebody killed themselves, shot himself in the head. And so we're standing there over this guy. And I mean, it's terrible now looking back at it. Like I said, cops are just, it's kind of, like I said, the way that they have to get through the experience, but we're all standing around this guy. And there's nothing to do, obviously, at this point. It's kind of just quote unquote, kind of like a crime scene at this point, right? And another officer walks up to the group of us that are just standing around this guy talking. And she walks up and she looks at all of us and she's like, did anybody activate emergency response?
Yeah, that's
And
well, part of my training working at the school was we got like serious advanced first aid training, because if somebody got hurt at the school, it would like, we're getting medevac. Like the clinic was very understaffed, very under-equipped. Like we had more emergency medical equipment at the school than they did at the clinic.
Yeah.
Kind of that kind of stuff. And one of the things, we were taught in that is like if there is an actual emergency, like you in the blue shirt, go call 911. Like this is your only job, is to call 911 or call for assistance. And like, that is the only thing I want you to do. I'm going to manage this. You need to do that.
Definitely got to identify that one person.
Yeah. Like this. And, I would sit in on, it was Turks and Caicos. We were in hurricane path. I would sit in as the School for Field Studies rep on these hurricane management meetings with like the local government. And it was just all these people squabbling over, well, what are we going to do here? And how about this? And how about that? And I would ask questions like, well, what do we do with casualties? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, so we have, because Ike hit that island hard in, I think, 95. And I was like, so what if we have another Ike? Like something big comes through and like no power, no water, nothing. What are we going to do? And they're like, well, we'll do this and we'll do that. And I was like, well, what do we do with the casualties? And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, there will be casualties. What do we do? And they're like, well, we leave them there. I'm like, you can't. Like, you got to do something with them. You got to bag them and bury them. I'm like, well, no, the mortician does that. And I was like, guys, this is part of my work in Haiti. I was there for the cholera outbreak. And that was an interesting training to sit through, was UN folks talking about how to deal with cholera patients. And like, I know how to treat those. I know what to do. And that was a very eye-opening training.
Yeah. Like
stuffing bleach and gauze in every orifice and bag them and bury them. And then like burn your clothes when you're done. Wow. Kind of like, and I was trying to explain to folks on the island, like, this is the process. This is how we got to do something. And like, well, we do it. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, we'll help out as best we can. You help us as best you can. Everybody's okay. But it was just so bizarre that a lot of people don't understand just how horrifically awful things can get until things are horrifically awful.
Yeah.
And I hope most everybody doesn't have to realize how horrifically awful things can get.
Right. Yeah, I agree, man. Hopefully it's not, I don't think we're heading in that direction. I think it's actually a beautiful world that we live in.
Oh yeah. No, I'm just thinking more natural disaster stuff. And that's one of the reasons I left the school, is like just hurricane season from like April to September. Like, you are on edge. There's a cloud, check the weather. So check the weather every day. Check the weather. Check the forecast hourly at points. We're putting the shutters up. So it's time let's get the shutters ready. Get the shutters out. Like, and it's just, it was, that time of year was really high stress, and it was such a pain in the ass to put the shutters up and take the shutters down. I mean, that was 2 days of work for 8 people.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of it.
Rob, this has been great, dude.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming over. It's been a lot of fun. Yes. It's nice to learn a little bit more about you. Like, we've talked a lot, we've hung out a lot and everything like that, but it's a rare opportunity to be able to just sit down and get to learn a little bit more about you. So I appreciate that, man.
Well, I appreciate the chance.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to throw out before we wrap up?
Nope.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, so much tuning in for Brave Men Dare. Go subscribe and follow wherever you can find your podcasts. Also on social media, you can find us obviously on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and go follow us on YouTube as well. Please subscribe to YouTube, click the notification, and do all of that kind of stuff. Last but not least, it's really, really helpful just in the scope of like podcasting and the realm of podcasting. There's so many podcasts out there. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review and give us 5 stars. And if you don't, then don't bother. We don't need we don't want to hear your 2 cents if you're not into the podcast. Just keep that shit to yourself. We're only looking for positive reviews at this point in time, but we'll see everybody on the next one. Thanks for listening to this episode of Bread Men Dare. If you haven't yet, take a moment and subscribe to our channel, click that little notification bell, and check out some of these other clips. Last but not least, we'd really appreciate it if you sent this podcast to somebody else. Share it with a friend, share it with a buddy, and don't hesitate to reach out. The conversations that we have on the podcast are meant to inspire you, but also we want to hear what it brings up for you. Whether you share it in the comment, send us an email, or call us up. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode.